Okay, we are live. Well, dears, guess what happened to me this morning? There I was, minding my business, trying to sort things out to have just a good, solid writing day. And then all of a sudden, there's a knock on my front door. And guess who it was? It was a Jehovah's Witness. This actually marks the very first time since I've lived in this house that a member of my former religious cult, the one I was raised in, actually bearded me in my lair. And a couple observations off front. First, nothing against the lady who knocked on my door. She seems like a perfectly pleasant individual. This isn't going to be a video ragging on her. Second observation, evidently the rumors about Jehovah's Witness ladies being allowed to wear trousers instead of skirts and dresses are true. So that was something that I felt kind of envious about because when I was growing up and all through my tenure in that particular cult, I would have been extremely grateful if I could have worn some trousers and long underwear and been able to actually to keep warm when, in the depths of winter when we had to go door knocking. That would have been a much better situation. There comes a point where pantyhose and leg warmers and all that just doesn't cut it. So, kudos for the JW ladies. They can wear trousers now. And they were very respectable. I mean, it's something you could have worn in any office and been, perfectly acceptable. Then the third thing is that I noticed that they're not carrying around their big, gigantic book bags like I had to back in the day. So that was an interesting thing. She just had like a little, I would say about like a tablet-sized little folder. She had her little article about, when will war end in the world? That sort of thing. One of their generic titles, and then she had invitations because apparently this weekend they're going to have some big talk about how the hope for a world without war, that sort of thing, and she was handing out invitations. See. Hello, Zerv and the Time Lord. Thanks for joining me. Thank you for the compliments on the daily videos, even though I am on a hiatus from those. I appreciate the compliment very much. I needed a little break from the old routine. These things happen from time to time, but I very much appreciate your appreciation. Let's see. But as I was saying, from time to time, it's not unusual when there's big events for the Jehovah's Witnesses to use that as an opportunity to have some kind of special talk, invite the public in, and essentially they're trying to recruit interest so they can gain new members and all that stuff. It's standard operating procedure. It's something that they did immediately after 9/11. Not only did they have a scheduled talk that they wanted to draw people in with, but they also, at that time, they had us, changing our door-to-door message to a message of comfort and that sort of thing. And that went on for a while. But they've done it for other occasions too. And of course, with all of the uproar politically in the world, with all of the various conflicts breaking out, the recent assassination of Charlie Kirk, it has not escaped the witnesses that people are on edge. And what do people do when they're on edge? They look to spiritual comfort when they don't see hope for solutions in the current system or in the political realm, or they don't know how particular social problems can get ironed out. People do generally turn to faith, and that's something that the Jehovah's Witnesses they do absolutely take advantage of. My reaction to this lady, I was perfectly polite, detached but polite. She asked if if that invitation was something I was interested in. I said, no, I don't think so. And she took her leave. There was nothing, no unpleasantness occurred. I don't feel the need to be unpleasant to her personally. Also, one other thing that I noticed that was odd is that she came to the door by herself. Now, when I left the witnesses, they were really gung ho on going to doors two by two. But apparently, either this is a more assertive lady, or some of the other rumors that I've heard about JWs no longer being required to report their time in the door to door ministry are true. And then, so if people don't have to report their time, then no one's keeping track of what they do or what they don't do. And so it seems to me that perhaps there's even less. Okay, camera's back. It seems to me there's even probably less participation in the door-to-door ministry than what there used to be. So I found that very interesting indeed. But still, it takes courage whether you're selling vacuums or trying to sell a religion. It takes courage to knock on a stranger's door and ask them to drop what they're doing and talk about what you want. So, I have to give her credit and kudos for that. A lot of people just don't have the guts for that sort of thing. Hi, Vulture 69. Glad to have you here with me. Yeah, yeah, that's really where we're at with that. And once I sent her on her way, again politely, I just really got to thinking about it of just how manipulative that religion really is, and just honestly how by extension, a lot of the Abrahamic religions, they really capitalize on guilt. And what a difference that it really has been since I came into the pagan world. When there are troubles, we often reframe them in our minds as, these are challenges, these are things meant for us to overcome. Our ancestors had to overcome a great deal in order to survive and build civilizations whose history that we're proud of and whose legacy we want to bring forward into the future. We look at things so much differently, and when it comes to war and conflict, I don't think anyone, enjoys it per se, but I think we are much more likely to accept it if that's simply how things are. You're not going to have this utopian world in which, all conflict ceases and everyone gets along and everything else. And that really brought up my whole issue with utopian ideas in general, because I've often said over the years that the Jehovah's Witnesses and other utopian type cults, a lot of political cults, they are all trying to sell you some idea of paradise, of do what we say, join our team, let's all work in this together and we can have our paradise, or Armageddon will come and God will create paradise for us, some variation upon that theme, depending upon whether you are looking at a religious cult or a political or social cult. Ultimately, they are promising you something. They are promising you conditions that are not possible to exist, but they're trying to get you involved and think that maybe they could. And when people are desperate, they will cling to any kind of hope, however false. People will get involved in things. I mean, we've already seen in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination about how many people have suddenly found religion and they're going to church again. And some people want to get baptized and give their lives to Jesus and everything else. And I'm thinking, okay, this is to be expected, because when people are looking for some kind of spiritual comfort, they generally go to what's most around them and what's convenient, and what's around and convenient for us, well, it's one flavor of Christianity or another. And it looks like the Jehovah's Witnesses are also trying to get a little piece of that pie with their little invitation campaign to their special talk to rope you into their organization. Oh, it really bugs me, but I mean, this is something that we've seen, so it isn't to be unexpected. But it also makes me very sad for people who, for probably very sincere reasons, are looking for comfort. They're looking for hope. They're saying, "I need to be part of something that's bigger than me. I need to make some kind of connection, just because the world is so scary on my own, and I can't figure out how to navigate it." Look, I understand that. I mean, in pagans, we look for guidance too. I mean, we look to our ancient philosophers. We look to things like the Havamal. We look to the Celtic triads. A lot of us look to Marcus Aurelius when we're needing to keep a cool head under pressure. It's not that we are not also looking to influences, but it's we have a different understanding of this is not going to solve the problem in and of itself. I think all of us who are associated with this channel are, enough of realists and pragmatists to say, okay, let's say, poof, magically, the world overnight, everyone became one form of a pagan or another. Okay, very good. We would have a lot less, I think, idealistic talk in politics and in the social order. I think there'd be a lot more pragmatism. But I think all of us are aware that problems wouldn't just go away. Problems are just always going to exist. There's going to be the problem of, we didn't get very much rain this year, and so our crops didn't do well, or do we have enough through what we've produced or what we're able to trade with others in order to sustain ourselves through the winter, with all of our technology. There's all sorts of things we can make the machines do, but there's also some pretty serious questions of should the machines be doing certain things. We would still have that as a problem. We would still have to navigate and really get through the ethics of that, and also think about, what does it mean to be human and live a human life? Are we doing any of those things? Are we pursuing ideas that are actually going to enable that, or are we on a self-destructive course? We would still have problems. even if we had 100% pagan societies throughout the world. But that's just not the mindset in these Abrahamic religions, and certainly not in the Jehovah's Witness religion. They are selling paradise, they're either through heaven or paradise on earth, or whatever version of it is. They are trying to sell the illusion of we have the answers. And the thing about the mindset of religions of we have the answers, you just need to memorize them and then implement them in your life, that's not exactly going to train people's minds to ask questions of, of the we claim this is virtuous. Well, what makes it virtuous? Is it virtuous in every situation, or is there a limiting factor? Are there other principles that need to be applied? We aren't as prone to thinking that there's a one size solution for everything, and we realize that it's necessary to take other matters into account, specifically because I think it's our mindset that with that polytheistic mindset, with the actual deities having different areas of responsibility, and some of them have overlap, but many of them don't. I think we just understand that sometimes there's the right tool for the right job, and that there's always going to be another piece of the puzzle that has to be solved. And that isn't a curse. That's just the nature of existence, whether we're existing in the divine realms on the other side of the veil, or if we're here incarnated on earth. That's just what life is. No matter what our circumstances, life is just life. And that's one of the things that I'm so grateful about having become pagan, is because I have let go of so many unrealistic expectations. They're not eating me alive, they're not plaguing me, and they're certainly not the basis upon which I try to influence the world. When I'm looking at political solutions to problems, I'm not thinking how perfect is this person and how closely do they align with my theological opinions. I mean, can you even imagine? But that's what a lot of people in the Christian world will do, and they get very annoyed if their political leaders are not exactly on the same page as they are, or they don't do things exactly as they wish they would do them. They have too much of the utopian and not enough pragmatism in their nature, and I think this is very much we are witnessing the consequence of ideas. And I've talked about that on this channel so many times, and I've talked about it even in videos that deal with, the elements and why we associate a particular forms of energy or ways of doing things with those particular elements and what that means. And where do all things begin? Where do we, for those of us who cast circle, where does where do we start calling the quarters? Where does that begin? It begins in the east. It begins with air. It begins with the mind, the thought, ideas. Everything is a seed of those ideas, and then it goes through the progression of the other elements to finally reach ultimate manifestation. That's why we do things in the order that we do them. And I wish a lot of people and other channels were did a better job of explaining that sort of thing. But that's a gripe for another occasion. Right now, we're talking about just some of the thoughts that have just popped into my head since that Jehovah's Witness lady knocked on my door. Unlike her, I'm not waiting for the world to come to an end. I realize that we could very well be at the end of a major cycle. I think we are. I think we're going to go through a chapter of considerable upheaval. I really do. And I think there are various scenarios in which we are facing major change in the next 10 to 15 years. That's just how it looks at the moment. But again, there's a lot of things, a lot of ingredients in this cauldron that makes up our circumstances right now. And there's a lot of different things that could impact the ultimate outcome. So while I certainly acknowledge certain possibilities and probabilities, I know there's always the unexpected that we can't always account for. But things do appear to be in motion. And I know that if we want a better future, if we are going to get through some of the rough stuff, we have to start planting the seeds for the world we want to live in. That's been a theme on this channel for the past several months of, you aren't necessarily going to get out there and convince people to stop poisoning themselves with bad ideas or to cease and desist with destructive behaviors, but you do have control over yourself, of just in the way you live your daily life, of planting the seeds for a way of living and an approach to life that isn't just sustainable, enables human survival, but enables us to thrive, enables us to take on challenges and even start to relish them, get a little bit of that energy and high and adrenaline of oh boy, this is going to be so hard and it's going to take so much out of me, but I'm going to feel so fantastic once I can actually declare victory over whatever the challenge happens to be. And I talk about these things all the time. It's because specifically for times of uncertainty like we're experiencing right now. I mean, last night, my husband and I were watching Timcast IRL. That's just one of our evening things that we do. Gives him a chance to find out what's going on in the world and hear different people with different views discuss it. And Tim in particular was in a pretty low, depressed place. Uh, he doesn't see himself as any hero. He sees himself as someone who, to the best of his understanding and beliefs, is trying to do right by the country and trying to have a good impact on the world. Whatever you think of him or his opinions or whatever else, he's coming at it through an honest place, and he sees himself as taking great risks because, like a lot of the other major media personalities, I mean, he certainly does have threats to his life for sure. And he gets frustrated from time to time when he perceives that other people in the sphere are not as necessarily as willing to risk as much as he. And what he's really looking like, and there was only men on his panel last night, so none of them really got and understood the emotional state that he was in and what was actually needed to redress it. They were trying to logically correct his feelings, which I tell you, it's interesting to see men do that to each other. I've always found that very irritating when they try to do that to me. But the devilish part of myself said, okay, so they do this to each other and they also drive each other crazy. Okay. But the more compassionate side of me was saying, just I wish that any woman had been at the table because she would have said, it's very difficult to essentially be in the vanguard of something, to essentially be leading and not being sure if other people are going to be follow and he just needed some encouragement is what he needed to keep in order to keep going. But they didn't quite understand that. And a lot of people are in this. I just want to shrink. I just want to hide away. And the ones who aren't in that just make me invisible and maybe the troubles of this world will pass me by. Other people, they are looking to something bigger, some kind of group they can gather with so they can feel protected. And that's just what I keep coming back to with that lady who knocked on my door. It wasn't just her, it wasn't just the moment, it wasn't just the particular message that Jehovah's Witnesses are trying to push at this particular time. None of that really, it wasn't just the surface of that. It's speaking to something that's much deeper. It's people looking for, you know, a, a raft. They're looking for a raft in the middle of a stormy ocean. So I think it's important for us as pagans to say that we're not looking for a raft because we built our raft. We built our raft through our spiritual studies, through understanding the nature of reality, through rejecting the idea of utopia, and through ultimately saying, I'm not going to let this beat me. And whether something takes me out or not really doesn't matter. It cannot defeat me because I am not giving up. Um, and I think it's a little bit easier for us to keep ourselves inspired like that because a lot of it is self generated. We have our own internal motivators. Now, of course, that isn't necessarily distributed in equal measure amongst the pagan community. We have leaders for sure, and there are also plenty of people who are followers who need a little bit more of that external influence to keep them bucked up. And those who are willing to speak up and say things and say, let's just keep our wits about us. Let's keep focused upon, let's live out our values. Let our lives be that proof of concept. And, one way or another, eventually things will take a turn for the better. We're going to be okay. And the long run, maybe not this incarnation, but perhaps the next, we will start having a world that's a bit friendlier to us and a world that actually perhaps is constructed on our ideals. We do have that ahead of us. And I think it's just a little bit easier for us to cling to that. And even for the people who aren't necessarily starters, who are more followers than anything else, they at least have that idea put into their minds through reading the myths and through public pagan conversation of you've just got to get up and start doing the work yourself. You're not don't look for someone else to rescue you. You've got to start benefiting yourself. And as you benefit yourself, you can join together with other pagans who are also working towards their own ends. And that, of course, improves the odds that the gods will help us along when and as we need it. But it all has to come from that place of self generation, of not looking for the hero, of being your own. And we are so blessed to have that advantage over the Abrahamic religions. When I was stuck in that Jehovah's Witness cult, I was always looking to the external. Always, because you're taught that you're not capable of doing things on your own. You really are. Not just because I happen to be female, but just because, I'm human. And humans, of course, cannot do without having someone tell them what to do all day, every day about every single thing in their lives. And that once that gets into your head, it's really difficult to deprogram from. There's a reason why it's really difficult for people to break out of cults in general. Now, thankfully, in the past few years, a lot of people in the XJW community have really laid out a roadmap that other people who are beginning to wake up are able to cling to, and it helps them find their own way. But even so, no one can breathe for you. A person still has to take that path for themselves, and that's extremely difficult for them to do. And when I was there, I always saw past the slogans that we gave people at the door about how, oh, Jehovah's people are a happy people. Well, I was a relatively intuitive child, and I was under no illusions about the unhappiness of many people in the congregation I was raised in, the difficulties in their lives, and the fact that, a lot of their smiles were just a mask and nothing more. And a lot of them had very serious issues and they weren't getting support. As a child, I could recognize that, that really wasn't the case. We tell that to people and, it's aspirational. I saw it as aspirational because they also teach you to make excuses for the organization. But and then, by the time I was a teenager, I looked at the men in charge of the local congregation, and they were not men who I really found to be capable in any way. They were not men who I thought were particularly organized. They didn't, there's a lot of life experience they were lacking. I just never saw them as dependable, reliable, or anyone that, you would really call upon in an emergency. And of course, I never did because, by the time I was 15, I was like, no, 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 I'm all too aware of your failings and you're not going to be there or be of any practical use when the time that I or anybody else needs help. And I could see that from other people's experiences with them too, expecting the elders to come in and give them wise counsel and help them solve their family problems, solve their depression, solve their marital issues. And of course, nothing came of it. Nothing can come of it. But they were still looking to that outside rescue. And of course, with the Jehovah's Witnesses, they're really looking for the Great Tribulation and for Armageddon to follow after that, and God to destroy the wicked, and then they can bring the earth back to a paradise earth. They're looking for a literal, literal act of God to rescue them from just life. They are looking to be rescued from life itself. Now, to a certain extent, the other Abrahamic religions are also guilty of this. They're always, their whole Christ is king and Jesus will take care of it. God's in control. They're always looking to, outsource responsibility for making things better. And people they rag on what's perceived as the political right, which I'm not sure what the factions should really be called in America anymore, because I think it's just pro-America and anti-America, to be perfectly honest with you at this stage. But people are saying, why can't the Republicans do anything? Why are they so reactionary? Why do they never take decisive action? Why do we not get prosecutions? Why do we not get any of these things? And I've been trying to point out to people for some time the religious ideology that the majority of those people subscribe to, it has them literally looking outside of themselves for a personal savior. Jesus is literally what their brains are oriented to as the solution for everything. And so they are always waiting for him to come and swoop them up, take care of the problems, and set the worlds to right. They are incapable because they're too busy waiting on their gods to do anything. And the only reason why this country has survived as long as it has, and the only reason why it has any hope for the future, is because of the latent pagan instincts in Western civilization that says, yeah, I'm going to have to do this myself. If I want to have a community that's organized against the things that threaten us. I'm going to have to gather with other people in town hall. I'm going to have conversations with my neighbors. I'm going to have to come to a consensus with people. I'm going to have to take action. I'm going to have to give people a reason to be involved. I'm going to have to fix it. That's the only thing that's going to make any headway with any issue, whether it is political, spiritual, or personal. That is the only thing that's ever going to make any kind of difference. And of course, the answer is to be found in the pagan mindset and the pagan philosophy, because we are the natural religions of the world. Nature is our tutor. Nature is our measuring stick. Nature tells us what is and is not actually possible, and to make our plans accordingly or suffer until we do. That's what's going to get us out of a lot of messes. That's what's going to enable us to actually endure. Which is why, I'm kind of encouraged the way over the past few years, even in these Christianized circles, there are some pagan ideals that are starting to creep in. It never ceases to amaze me about how they'll quote Aristotle and Plato and all of these other Greek and Roman philosophers in times of trouble. The ones who aren't quoting scripture, they're quoting, the Greek and Roman philosophers. And it's good, and I'm glad. It's a shame they're trying to apply that in a Christian context. That little contradiction is going to have to be resolved at some point. But at least it's a step in the right direction. At least their instincts are still leading them to sources of advice that are actually going to be useful for a change. I mean, and that's just not something Abrahamic religions do. What's the solution to war? Oh, well, for Christ to return and take his full kingship, and for us all to be raptured up into heaven. It's their plan. Or in the case of the Jehovah's Witnesses, again, Christ will return and Armageddon will begin. He'll cast the devil into a pit and the wicked will be destroyed, and only God's people, aka Jehovah's Witnesses exclusively, will make it through those troubles, and they'll have paradise earth forever and ever. That is their plan. Their plan is to be rescued. That's their plan. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I am really very grateful that that's not my plan. I'm very grateful for the pagan community because that's not our plan. We don't expect the gods to take on the jobs that properly belong to ourselves, and I think that's ultimately why, in spite of all these outward shows of a revival of Christian religion of one form or another, it's why it doesn't worry me as much as what I think it would a few years ago. Just because I think it's on the surface level. I think this is very much of the moment. I think. I think they're going to hit a wall pretty quickly and realize that their religious faith is not adequate for the requirements of earthly action and earthly life. And that's a big thing. And I really do have a lot of hope. I think the pagan future is still coming for us. I think it's still very bright. I think, our own challenges to get there and to sow the seeds for it may be a lot more challenging than what we ever bargained for. But I do think that we will get there. And all of it is because a lot of it just comes down to that mindset. People who are willing to do things for themselves and act in accordance with good principles, and other people who are waiting for someone else to rescue them. So, as far as that lady who knocked on my door this morning, I think that's another reason why I was polite to her. Not only because I would have been polite anyway, just because she's a stranger at my door. But I really am glad that none of my irritation with her religion, her cult, really rose to the surface. Just because she is in a position where she's looking for a rescue in all the wrong places, and genuinely does not understand that she has the power within herself and the power of her ancestors and the power of the link to her ancestral gods to actually make a better future. She doesn't understand that. She's trying to build a better future. She thinks she's doing the right thing. I mean, she struck me as, being pretty open and honest. I mean, I get a fairly good read on most people when I see them, especially in person. And she's in a much worse position than we are. She really is. As much as we might worry about what's to come, we're still in a better position than she is because we're not waiting for a rescue. We're not dependent on one organization. I think most of us who are sincere, even if we were the only person on earth who had our beliefs, I think we would still carry on. I know I would continue doing my rituals, both for, the wheel of the year and for the new moons and the full moons and all my daily practices. I would continue to do that even if I was the only person on earth who did it. And I know there's a lot of other pagans who would do the same because it isn't about needing a bandwagon, even though it is nice to have community. I think it's just about having having enough evidence in front of our eyes about the value of the ideas we've been taught and the value of our practices that it makes us in some ways inoculated against looking for that rescue outside of ourselves. So, the upshot is kind of I'm counting my blessings, glad to be who I am, not missing the old cult at all. Yeah, still aggravated that they changed the rule about ladies wearing trousers after years and years after I left apparently because again on those cold winter mornings when I went door knocking it sure would have been nice to wear trousers and have some long johns underneath them. That would have made it a far less odious experience for me. Oh, but I mostly I just feel sorry for people right now. I felt sorry for that lady at my door. I feel sorry for, I feel sorry for a lot of the people in the Abrahamic religions who are waiting for their rescue, who are waiting for Jesus to solve it for them. Because you can waste so many years of your life waiting for a divine intervention when if you just helped yourself, you could attract some divine attention and be rewarded for your efforts if you just took the steps yourself. Oh, thank goodness we are who we are, right, gang? Thank goodness we're not in that situation. And as just as we're having their little religious revival right now, we're going to have another, mass crisis of faith. And I don't think it's going to take as long as what we might imagine. And when that happens, these are people who are going to need a support structure, not for us to convert them, because if they're being called by the gods, ultimately they just like we ourselves did, we yeah, and I don't even think convert is really the right word. We learned, we see these things and our ideas reflected in reality. The myths teach us a great deal about symbolism, the nature of the gods, even human behavior, why things happen the way that they do. And it just, things made sense again. And so we just started removing contradictions. There needs to be a name for that sort of process of the removal of contradictions because I think that would be a more accurate term than conversion. But if people in the future are meant to come back to their ancestral gods, I think there will be plenty of roads for them to be able to do that. We might need to hold their hands and let them know that it's okay once they get there, for sure. But they will eventually find their ways home if they're meant to. And as for everyone else, for the people who are really lost permanently to the Abrahamic religions, well, what a sad thing. What a very, very sad thing. But that's all I really have to say. I just wanted to share my few thoughts, observations about the lady, changes that the organization has made in their ministry and everything else, and just a few reflections on um, of just why paganism is just better for life, and just how detrimental those Abrahamic faiths really are. But they will fade away in due course. I don't think these religions really have another 2,000 years worth of steam in them. Do you? We're entering into that age of Aquarius. Do you really think they're still going to be around? You know, 20, 25, 2,600 years from now, once the age of Capricorn dawns, do you really still think they're going to be existing in the form that they are today, or have the kind of cultural power or even cultural awareness? I really don't. They're dying and they don't understand why. Maybe they will eventually. And maybe that will be what they need to find where they actually belong and get some real spiritual nourishment for a change. But those are my thoughts. Thanks, you guys, for those of you who've been hanging out and listening to me. Appreciate it. You popping in for this little impromptu live stream. Again, I just felt chatty about it, and since I'm not doing the daily videos, I have a little bit more wiggle room in the schedule just to pop on if I have a few random things to say. So thanks again. Have a good Friday. Have a good weekend. And again, if you're looking at the news, try not to let things get you too down. The question now is not should we be afraid or not afraid. The question is just what should be done and how can we do it honorably and support our families and our neighbors through difficult times. So hang in there, guys. And thank you for the compliment, Vulture69, always calming to listen to you. I try to do my best. And what's more, I don't want to just put on, a brave face for you guys. I want to come to you with a genuine sense of hope, with a realistic outlook on challenges that we face, and just to be genuinely supportive. Because I mean, what else is all this technology for, if not for us to try to provide that community for each other long distance until the day comes when we have community closer at hand to ourselves. So I'm happy to be able to provide that for you, and we're going to make it. Might live in interesting times, but we're going to make it. So, again, have a good Friday. Have a good weekend. I will pop in when I pop in. Bye, guys.